Nihanyang, hello, I am the Dark Fae, and welcome back to Confessions of a First-Time Dungeon Master. As always, if you missed the last session, I will put a link to it up in the corner for you over here. You can go check it out, catch up on what you missed, and then come back here to find out what happens next. I'm pretty excited for this one. A lot happened. So we are now on session, I believe, 55. So let's begin. Okay, so the first thing I did for this session after the recap was I asked everybody except for Basil to leave the call. So I got to do kind of a bit of a one-on-one secret-y thing with the entity in his ring that he correctly deduced to be Saint Criella Wist, who is actually the daughter of the goddess of madness, Wistria. So she manifests kind of within his subconscious in this dream nightmare maybe situation, and basically tells him that she wants him to continue to go and pursue and destroy these orbs, and reveals a bit that they do belong in fact to Wistria, and that they were created at sort of magical rifts or like weak points between the nightmare and the material plane in order to kind of keep Criella imprisoned, and that she definitely has an agenda against her mother, probably has many other agendas. She's not really quite stable in the brain, and there are many entities that she has goals against. So she is like an enemy of Alith Malar, you know, in the towers people, since she has some history with Yorkaden. So basically she kind of offers Basil sort of offers him a deal, or proposes that if he continues to go and break these, like the more he breaks, the more powerful she becomes, and the more she can either help them or can kind of affect the world. Like now that 3 out of 6 of the orbs are broken, she actually has some better leeway to actually communicate with Basil, hence this meeting. And this is kind of like, mechanics-wise, this is like, a potential, you know, way to start a multi-class into Warlock, you know, making a pact with this deity, or demigod, really, saint, can give them new powers. So she kind of offers Basil that if you do this for me, I mean, she would be willing to make an agreement, make a pact to give him powers beyond his imagining, or conversely, she can also, you know, vanish from his life forever, since she's like kind of possessing him while in the ring. Like once the orbs are broken, she doesn't need him anymore and would let him go. Of course, then if Basil doesn't agree, she, you know, makes some subtle threats that he seems to care a lot about Ivar, and that Ivar was not always, you know, of his own mind and consciousness, and she can certainly cause something like that to happen again. So I think the meeting may have freaked Basil out a bit, and now is a sort of, there's also potential, you know, to pit a saint versus a goddess, since they are, I think, pretty opposed to Wistria. So now that's kind of a gamble as to whether they really want to free this new and chaotic and volatile and dangerous power in order to fight against another chaotic and evil and dangerous power, or if they just want to, you know, deal with the devil they know. Criella also hints that Asmodeum, that she's familiar somehow with Asmodeum Stria, the Umberlord, and Basil kind of asks whether she, I forget exactly the wording, but kind of like whether she had a hand in how much Asmodeum is able to say, to which Criella kind of laughs and says, "Oh, that's not my doing." To which he's like, "Oh fuck, it's Wistria." So he knows that somehow that Asmodeum is tied to Wistria, and that Criella is somehow familiar with him, and that there's more to the Umberlord than meets the eye. But anyways, pretty soon after that, he wakes up and they finish taking their watch and such, and it is then day 3 of travel. So on this day 3, the weather's kind of nice. So as they're kind of cresting this icy hill overlook kind of a thing, they spot a lone figure in kind of this wasteland, camped out, kind of honing an axe. And this is our new character, replacing Puck. So this is Kren Agadarai. So he is a Goliath barbarian, you know, classic, like Grog Strongjaw. But he is going to be a bear totem, you know, barbarian, which is going to be interesting because now I'm thinking he's going to be really difficult to kill. Which is, I guess, kind of the point. But, so seeing this lone figure, which their guide Merrigan kind of remarks is kind of weird to be out here on their own with no, like, visible other, like, protection or other comrades. And so Beverin sends his bat to go and investigate. And so then they get their first good look at this Goliath barbarian with kind of lines drawn in his face, like 8 feet tall, you know, wearing heavy furs and carrying a great axe. And Kren unsuccessfully tries to throw an axe at the bat, but knowing he's kind of being watched, seemingly, since a bat in the daytime outside, not common, he kind of retreats a little bit. And eventually, like, the party kind of comes down. They kind of, like, cautiously, like, survey each other before they end up kind of joining a bit. Kren kind of is kind of a stoic, like, loner, kind of not talkative type. Kind of like, a bit of like Geralt of Rivia, where he kind of is just, like, gruff one-liners, doesn't want to explain himself, which honestly I do prefer over the kind of jokestery Puck. Kren does mention that he is looking for a witch in order to perform something that needs to be done, a sacrifice that is worth making. And the group has heard of a witch. Probably they figure out pretty quickly that it's probably Baba Sindra, all the way up here in the north. And after some discussion, they kind of, and since they're all kind of going the same direction, they kind of agree to tentatively join up for the time being, and then once they get to Reading Post, they'll kind of figure out what they want to do and, like, where they want to go, etc. So, after camping that day, then comes the 4th day, which is kind of the last 4th day, and then after that there's another half day of travel to Reading Post. So on the 4th day, they're kind of getting to the point of the Frigid Wastes, where there are kind of little ruin sites, excavation sites kind of dotted around. And as they're traveling, this is what I'm excited for, because I've been planning this for some time. As they kind of walk past one of the ruins, they see very clearly, standing in kind of the middle of them, staring at them, seemingly waiting for them, a actually familiar figure wearing a dark cloak with kind of shorn hair on the sides that was silver, but now his whole head of hair is silver. And standing there is none other than Caithin Ilias, who is the wizard who once attended Fairnay back at her shop at the Siskorian Keep, who was a grim knife who many weeks ago disappeared after going up north to follow a lead about Basil's ring, because he had heard rumors of like an exorcist that could potentially help with this, and he went to go investigate and then never returned. Subsequent sending messages did not reach him, and he is now here to offer an invitation to the party. It is a bit of a coincidental thing, since kind of made Kren's character to like fit in to be here in the Frigid Wastes so that he wouldn't have to like wait terribly long before his character was introduced. But this I had already planned before Kren's character had been made, so kind of excited. So yeah, they're kind of like, what the hell is Cathan doing here? And Cathan basically says that he tells them that like he went to go find Baba Sindra and found her, and ended up making a deal with her, and that he is basically now serving her. Umric kind of asks if he should relate any of this to Ferney, if like tells him that like she and like the other Grim Knights have been worried about him, to which he's apologetic, but basically says that if you are to pass on a message, tell Lady Ferney that he can no longer be under her employ, and that he will not be returning to the Grim Knives. So he also kind of gives them a skull that has like two black crystals for its eye sockets, and tells them that this skull will teleport them to Baba Sindra's abode, and that the enchantment on it will last for 5 days. If the 5 days pass and they don't arrive, then she will assume that her invitation was declined. So that's like a convenient way of getting them there, but also kind of gives them a choice so they don't have to go necessarily. After that, Cathan teleports out, and then there's some discussion of whether or not they want to do this. I mean, hags, dangerous, powerfully magical beings that could have a lot of information and that can perform quote-unquote miracles, is what I've said to them in the campaign. But there's a price, and Cathan has described it as an equal price, but an equal price might mean different things to different parties. So Cathan does not reveal like what deal he made or what price he paid or what was done for him, but Kren, who is interested obviously in going to see the witch, asks him like if she can actually deliver, and he has confirmed that she can. So it's kind of more motivation to go. I do kind of hope they go to the hag, because the hag is like, I'm really excited to make a hag encounter. I don't know, I think hags are so fun, and I don't think I really got the like sinister creepiness across with the 3 hags in the swamp. So for this one, I'm kind of like basing it off of Isharnai in Critical Role. So really excited to try and do something like that. But anyways, after Cathan leaves, Umric immediately snitches. His words, not mine. He sends a message to Ferney telling her that Cathan is alive and here and seemingly working for Baba Sindra. Ferney kind of asks if he had revealed any reason as to why he did so. But sadly not. And when Umric kind of asks or mentions that they might go and see her, etc., Ferney just kind of warns them to not make a deal, since, I mean, she doesn't know Baba Sindra personally, but just by reputation and knowing that she is like a hag, it's not a good idea, no matter like what you stand to gain. But I mean, I feel like, I don't know, my characters might listen, because, you know, hags, but at the same time, I feel like they don't listen to NPCs' advice very often. Like the orbs, you know. Anyway, after a discussion and kind of taking their last rest on their last day of travel. They do send some sending messages. They might have done it the previous day to Valkyrie as well, kind of asking how she is, how she's doing, and they kind of arrange for Valkyrie to be brought up here to read in post instead of them going back to retrieve her and then possibly like having to go backward, like back and forth. So they do arrange that. They do inform Fernay also about Buck, and as well as the orb. She tells them that they should keep the orb in a safe space so that you-know-who doesn't spy on them again. And then Basil also sends a few messages to the Umberlord after his very concerning dream, and actually tells them that the orb is broken and that the entity is like a step closer to being free. Like, what do we do now? To which case the Umberlord is like, fuck. But once again, he's like, don't go after the orbs. The tower will have to take precautions if this like proceeds any further. And it seems like it's urgent for Basil and the Umberlord to meet. Thing is, the Umberlord is kind of restricted from talking about this subject, so I have to kind of figure out how much he can actually tell them. And you know, as a DM, I want them to go break the orbs. But honestly, if they decide not to, I can also, like, work with that, since, Criella has her ways of manipulating people, and it could involve some people in the party. So, with those messages sent and kind of arrangements made, they take their last rest, and the next day push on to read and post. It takes about half the day, so they get there about noon or so, kind of midday, go to the mess hall and find that a few guards from Sinesk under Captain Nyrabrax are there waiting for them. They make their exchange, kind of the sword and the shield, as well as Merrigan's account, working as kind of proof that the deed has been finished. So as a reward, they end up keeping the Ring of Cold resistance, which is quite expensive. It's 5,000 gold. And then plus like all of their equipment and like the potions that they got. They don't actually get any gold value because also Sinesk is rebuilding. But what I did give them was a d6 of, which ended up being 300 gold worth of a material called Arcancelite, which is basically like residuum in Critical Role. It can function as like a substitute for spell components. It's like a light magenta colored stone that's refined into a powder, or it can be used to help with like an enchantment if they want to take something to like an artificer and get something magicked. So that's what they can also be used as a substitute for Revivify diamonds, which is great. So with that, then they go kind of take their meal, to get lunch, and before very long, a few Grimknife agents arrive with Valkyrie in tow. So the group is finally reunited. There's a bit of an interesting, maybe a bit cringy, bit of roleplay where the one playing Beverin and Valkyrie like ended up like kind of flirting with herself, and it was very interesting. So a bit awkward. There's a lot of asking whether like Beverin was hot or if like and stuff like that, and Beverin like kisses Valkyrie's hand and everyone's like, oh. So that was fun. But before long, this Beverin will now kind of return to Prill with the other Grimknife agents who are leaving the next morning. But now the party is all together and they can decide what they want to do next. They do kind of, again, offer their help and like keep an open channel kind of with Fernay if they need assistance with, you know, the whole Sincane problem down in Prill, which I honestly have not figured out what to do about. Like, I honestly don't know how they would fix this or plan an assassination, since everything is like covered in nightmare plane smoke. But I'll have to figure that out, I think, after the hag thing. So we left off with them kind of finishing their meal, taking some time to kind of relax and celebrate and catch up, and then in kind of the mid-afternoon is where we're going to pick up. I think they're planning on going to see the hag, which I'm excited about. Basil keeps saying that they should just kill her and get rid of her, to which Kren keeps replying, "She's no use to me dead." And then there's a lot of ways that this can go. If they get aggressive, if they do end up making a deal, they don't end up making a deal. I'm very excited to figure out. I'm kind of modeling it a bit off of Baba Lysaga from Curse of Strahd, but also Isharnai as that kind of like creepy factor. She's very powerful, and she's also like a friend or like a servant of Wistria. So we'll see how that goes. Excited. A lot happened in this episode. I felt really good about it. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for notifications when I put out new videos. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!